Is med school worth it? I won't make you wait until the end of this video. The answer is no. Too many people say they want to become doctors because they really want to help patients, but a lot of them wouldn't go through the entire process if they weren't guaranteed a six-figure income at the end of it. The truth is, money has an impact on a lot of people's decisions to become doctors, but I want to make this very clear. If you're thinking about becoming a doctor, money shouldn't influence your decision at all. And if it does, you need to watch this video, because I'm going to dissect exactly why med school is not worth it from both a financial and work-life balance perspective. Hey everybody, my name is Hisham Khan and welcome to Income Over Outcome, where I give you college, career, and of course, personal finance tips. The first time I realized med school wasn't worth it was when I was in high school trying to figure out what exactly to do in college, and my aunt told me I should definitely not become a doctor. She said if she was my age and she knew what she knows now, she never would have become a doctor, and the only reason she became one is because her whole life she was told becoming a doctor is the best way to guarantee success. And I feel like a lot of people fall into that trap, but if you keep up with this channel, you know that's definitely not true. There are a ton of alternatives just in the healthcare industry that can give you a good income and still allow you to have an impact. If you haven't seen one of my videos where I talk about alternatives to being a doctor, I'll put one of them right over here, and I'll also link it at the very end of this video, so definitely check it out. Now, one of the reasons my aunt said becoming a doctor is not worth it is because of all of the stress and the fact that work-life balance is so difficult to find, and there's a bunch of data backing this up. 76% of doctors say that work stress prevents them from getting sleep, and that makes total sense because doctors don't only have to worry about the well-being of their patients, but they're also worked extremely hard. They have to be on call, they work weekends, and a lot of them work a ton of hours. During residency, it's not uncommon for doctors to work up to 80 hours a week. And on top of that, a lot of residency programs require doctors to work one 28-hour shift at least 4 times a month. I don't know about you, but I couldn't imagine working that much. And for all of that time doctors spend in residency, they don't even get paid that much. In 2019, the average residency salary was just $61,200. That's actually lower than a lot of starting salaries right out of undergrad. Now, after residency, when doctors start practicing independently, their workload does go down a lot. But on average, doctors still work 59.6 hours a week. For perspective, the average American just works 40 to 44 hours a week. That means that even after residency, doctors are working 1.5 times harder than the average American. That's why they get paid so much. But let's have a look. For all the extra hours doctors spent in school and working, how much more are they really earning than the average American? Let's compare the lifetime earnings of a doctor versus the very average salary of a teacher. If a doctor worked until 65, they could expect to make $4.7 million throughout their lifetime after accounting for all of their student loans. The average teacher, on the other hand, would make just $2 million in their lifetime, but that's also accounting for any loans that they may have. Where it gets really interesting though is when you start factoring in all the hours of school and actual hours worked. A doctor would have to put in about 143,000 hours to earn their 4.7 million, but a teacher has to put in just 72,000 hours to earn their 2 million. That means that throughout their lifetimes, a doctor's average hourly wages are just $33.03 versus a teacher's $33.06. Now, I have to admit, this isn't a perfect study because there's a ton of different factors that go into it, but it's pretty close. If you want to know how exactly I got these numbers and how they work, I'll link the study in the description. But this does go to show there's a reason doctors make so much money. They have to work that much harder and have to deal with all of the stress that goes along with that. The real reason all those hours suck for doctors is because most of them aren't even spent taking care of patients. Doctors say say that 75% of their stress comes from bureaucracy and paperwork. And as someone who works in the healthcare industry, I can attest to how much administrative stuff doctors actually have to take care of. And honestly, all the administrative stuff is just as important as the patient's well-being, because without it, the hospital couldn't run. But that's not what doctors signed up to do. And all of this additional stress is what has caused 41% of doctors to say that they have seriously considered quitting medicine. Later on in their careers, a lot of doctors actually leave the clinical side altogether to pursue their MBA and do something like healthcare administration, because work-life balance is much better and it's just as profitable. These are just some harsh realities of becoming a doctor. Nurses get to interact with patients way more. So if that's what you want, becoming a nurse might be the better thing to do. The second reason med school isn't worth it from a financial standpoint is because there's a huge opportunity cost. By becoming a doctor, you're missing out on nearly 10 years of potential income. Think about it. The ideal path to becoming a doctor is going through 4 years of med school, and then after that, a minimum of 3 years of residency for less specialized programs like pediatrics. That's 7 extra years minimum, but the more specialized your field is, the more years of residency you're going to have to do. For neurosurgery, it's 7 years. And on top of that, some people go through a fellowship, which is usually another 3 years. Most doctors don't see that really high salary until they're at least 30, with the mid to lower 30s being way more common. And those years of missed income really add up. Now, these are completely random numbers, but I want to give you an example. Let's say instead of becoming a doctor, you decided to go into health administration instead. So you graduate undergrad at 22 years old and get a job starting at $70,000. Over the next 8 or 10 years, you're likely going to get a bunch of raises and promotions. So it's not unrealistic that by 30, you would be making over $100,000. But for the purposes of this video, let's say you average just $85,000 for the first 10 years of your career. That means if you pursue becoming a doctor, you would miss out on $850,000 of income. Even if you account for the salaries you would get in residency, it doesn't look so hot. Let's say you were only in a 3-year residency program, your missed earnings would still be over $667,000. You could argue that really doesn't matter since doctors earn way more than $100,000 and they would be able to make up that difference in just a few years, which would be true if it wasn't for all of their debt. If you add the cost of student loans onto the missed earnings, the opportunity cost starts climbing way up. Depending on the amount of debt, the total cost could easily reach $1 million. And that brings me into the third and most obvious reason med school isn't worth it, and that's student loans. In 2019, the average med school debt was $201,490. Now, it's not uncommon for people who have higher specializations or those who go to private schools to be in debt for upwards of $300,000. Now, the maximum amount of loans a med student can take from the federal government is just $138,500, which means most doctors have to take out at least $60,000 in private student loans, which have much higher interest rates. Even though doctors make so much money, paying off that amount of debt can be a real struggle because the interest compounding on it is insane. It's definitely possible for doctors to get rid of their debt in just a few years if they budget properly, and a lot actually do, but studies show that 60% of doctors have a hard time paying off their debt quickly. That's because a lot of doctors aren't financially literate enough to do that. They try to balance their loans with buying that brand new car, that new big house, and raising a family. In fact, 60% of doctors said that buying a home only slowed down their process of paying down their loans. 49% said that raising a family only increased their debt. If you become a doctor and do any of those things before you focus on your debt, you're going to be in the hole for a really long time. What you need to do is live like you're back in college and put as much as your income as possible towards your loans, so you can get rid of them in just 1 or 2 years. But let's be real, what 32-year-old earning $200,000 or $300,000 wants to live like that? It's only human nature to want to reward yourself for so many years of hard work, but I promise you, delaying that gratification would be worth it. You're going to have to sacrifice something, either your personal life or your financial well-being, or both. So there you go. The stress, the opportunity cost, and massive amount of debt are 3 big reasons med school isn't worth it. This video wasn't meant to discourage you at all, but to show you that becoming a doctor is not as glorified as people make it seem to be. If you watched this whole thing and are still passionate about helping patients and having an impact on their lives, then I'm positive you're going to be a great doctor. The moral is that money shouldn't have an impact on your decision at all. You should only become a doctor if you truly want to help people.